Hello class, and welcome to today's algebra lesson, which is about solving quadratics with the quadratic formula. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to use the quadratic formula to solve these problems, as well as use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions. So we're going to start with what is the quadratic formula. This is the most efficient algebraic way for us to solve quadratic functions. When we have our quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c, we have our a value, our b value, and our c value. We can take those and plug this into this formula down here, which is called the quadratic formula. And it is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing divided by 2a. Again, opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's apply this to a few problems. We've got x squared minus 12x is equal to negative 20. The first thing we need to do is get a, b, and c all onto the same side. So in this case, I'm going to add 20. There is no like terms to combine 20 with, so I just put it at the end. X squared minus 12x plus 20, and that is now equal to 0. From there, I can pick out my a, b, and c value. So in this case, a is 1, b is negative 12, and c is 20. So we are going to plug into our quadratic equation. The opposite of b, so 12 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 12 squared, minus 4 times the a value of 1 times the c value of 20. And then the whole thing is all divided by 2 times a, which in this case is 1. So now before we solve, we're going to go ahead and simplify this so that it's a little bit easier for us to put into our calculator. You're going to go ahead and plug in the part that is under the square root. So negative 12, remember when you put negatives in your calculator, you're going to type it as negative 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 20. And when you type that into your calculator, you are going to get an answer of 64. So again, you plug in the part that's just under the square root, and that's going to give us 12 plus or minus the square root of 64 all over, and then I can simplify 2 times 1 to just 2. So now we're going to want to solve this square root. So you're going to plug just the square root of 64 into your calculator, and you are going to find that that is 8. So now I have 12 plus or minus 8 over 2. Now what does this plus or minus mean? That means that we are going to take the two different versions to get our answer. So you would plug in your calculator 12 plus 8 in parentheses to keep that together, and then divided by 2. So your first answer, you are going to find out that x is equal to 10. Then we do 12 minus 8 and divide that by 2. And that is going to give us our second answer of x is equal to 2. So we solve our separate pieces here, one with the plus and one with the minus. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Step 1, picking out a is 4, b is negative 24, and c is 35. Plugging it into our quadratic formula, opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Simplifying the part underneath the square root, that gets me to 16. Taking the square root of 16 is 4. Adding and subtracting to get our two answers of 3.5 and 2.5. Once again, we have another quadratic here. My first step is going to be to pick out a, which is negative 2, b, which is 9, and c, which is 7. that's the best part about this quadratic formula is it doesn't matter, positive, negative, big, small, we can plug all these numbers in. So we're going to go the opposite of b, so -9 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 9 squared minus 4 times -2 times 7 all over 2 times our a value, which is -1. Then we're going to continue simplifying. So I'm going to take 9 squared minus 4 times -2 times 7. And that's going to give me -9 plus or minus the square root of 137 over 2 times -2, which is -4. Now, when you put the square root of 137 into your calculator, you're going to get a non-terminating decimal. So we want to round to 2 decimal places. It starts as 11.704. That 4 tells us to keep the value the same. So the first part of our problem then is going to be -9 plus 11.07, that value in parentheses to keep the numerator together, divided by -4. When you do that calculation, you're going to end up with an x equals -0.68 with your rounding. Then we also need to do -9 minus 11.07, also divided by -4. And I get that x is equal to 5.18. So those are our 2 answers for this problem. Go ahead and try this one on your own. So we've got our a value of 5, our b value of 2, and our c value of -9, plugging into our formula, simplifying, taking our square root, doing our adding and subtracting, we get 1.16 and -1.56. Next piece we have here, once again, we are going to go through and we have a is equal to 3, b is equal to -2, and c is equal to 9. When we do this, I now have the opposite of b, so 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -2 squared, minus 4 times a times c, so times 3 times 9, all over 2 times 3. As I go through and simplify this now, I'm going to have 2 plus or minus. When I simplify the inside, I'm going to end up with the square root of -104, all divided by 6. When you go to plug in -104 into your calculator, it is going to give you an error message. That is because we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if you end up with a negative under that square root, your answer is no real solutions. There are no answers. There is no place where this quadratic crosses the x-axis. The last piece then is based on that information, and it is called the discriminant. So notice b squared minus 4ac, that's what's underneath your square root. And that is what tells us how many answers there actually are going to be to the problem. So if the number you get under your square root is positive, you will always have 2 answers. One being the addition answer, one being the subtraction answer. If you end up with 0 under that square root, you are only going to have 1 answer because adding 0 and subtracting 0 give you the same answer. If you end up with a negative under that square root, you have that no solution case we just discussed because you cannot take the square root of a negative number. So we're going to just practice determining our number of solutions, starting by adding 3 to both sides. So we have it as a full quadratic equation. So 4x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Picking out our different values, I've got a is equal to 4, b is equal to 5, and c is equal to 3. Now, to find the discriminant, you are only going to do b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 3. You plug that value into your calculator, and you are going to get that your discriminant is equal to negative 23. So that's finding the discriminant. Then that negative 23, because it is a negative, tells us that there would be no solutions to this problem. It's not asking you to solve, it's just asking you how many solutions exist. Go ahead and try this one on your own. First, calculating the discriminant. So you add the 11x to both sides and continue to solve with a is 2, b is 11, and c is 15, getting you down to a discriminant of 1. So if your discriminant is 1, how many solutions does this equation have? Because it is a positive number, it has 2 real solutions. If you have questions about this or anything else from the lesson, please feel free to reach out and let me know.